academy and found out that it was against the law for women to be fighter pilots. And it just pissed me off. And I was like, well, that's exactly what I'm going to do. The law had to change, the policy had to change, but I'm an endurance athlete for a reason. I'll like outsuffer anybody. First in the Air Force to fly a fighter jet in combat, 26 years total, including the academy, 6 deployments, 325 combat hours in the A-10, retired as a colonel. So many people do struggle with leaving the military, going through a divorce, empty nesting the kids, selling the business, whatever that is, like a major transition in life. What I have found is...
This is All Quiet on the Second Front, podcast where boring conversations around defense tech and national security come to die. Join me, Tyler Sweatt, and my second front homies as we dismantle the mundane and cut through the bureaucratic bullshit to demystify the world of defense tech. But be warned, this is not a typical government podcast. Are you ready to get weird?
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm your host, Tyler Sweatt. Welcome to another episode of All Quiet on the Second Front, the podcast where boring defense talk comes to die. Super excited today. We've got the one and only Martha McSally with us, and I'm very excited, Martha, one, to I think have some of our folks kind of hear more about your story and your perspective, and two, just to get to have this conversation. I think one of the joys of the job I have is getting to work and learn from you. So thanks for being here.
Oh, absolutely, Tyler. I'm looking forward to it. It's been a lot of fun being on the Second Front team.
Heck yeah. So I've alluded to it. I've had the opportunity to get to know you and learn a bunch from you. For some of our listeners, viewers who maybe aren't as familiar, kind of the who are you, what's your story, kind of what are you up to, the once over the moon, if you will.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was born. No, I'm not going to go this. Real quick, I went from being a shy, motion sick little girl who went through some real difficulties in my young life, to include losing my dad at 12 very suddenly, changed the trajectory of my life. Some other traumas after that I've shared very openly with people. But found myself going to the Air Force Academy. Didn't really know what I was doing. Honestly, I was 17. I was just trying to make sure I had unconsciously, I think I wanted to make sure I had some guardrails, because I could have gone either way with my entrepreneurial, slightly rebellious spirit that I have. I was like, it might be good for some like purpose and direction here until I unpack my shit here and get some clarity. But I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and I got to the academy and found out that it was against the law for women to be fighter pilots. And it just pissed me off. And I was like, well, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So took this very long journey. It was about 10 years to where I had nothing to do with the change. The law had to change, the policy had to change, but I'm an endurance athlete for a reason. I'll like outsuffer anybody and develop that skill over time. I think we're kindred spirits there, Tyler. And
Oh yeah.
I was in the right place at the right time when they finally changed the policy. They discovered that the jet doesn't care if you have ovaries or not, and just fly well. And
Who would have thought?
Yeah, so off I went. I was able to help break through that barrier. First in the Air Force to fly a fighter jet in combat. Served 26 years total, including the academy, 6 deployments, 325 combat hours in the A-10, retired as a colonel. I was serving as a professor of national security studies in the German Alps for a year and a half as my kind of transition job. And I found myself, I can't help myself. Like I get into a place and I want to like reorganize the place and change it. And I'm just too much of a change agent. And also I found myself yelling at the TV and what the hell are these idiots doing in Washington, D.C. And my frustration with kind of governments, even though I joke, I hate politics. But I quit my job, got on a plane, came home, and decided to run for Congress, which is a whole nother crazy story. I was like, what do I do? Do I file paperwork somewhere? And I had no idea what I was doing, but I just have this fire in my belly to make a difference and don't walk by a problem, much to the frustration of many people in my life. I just can't help myself. And so off I went. And 3 years later, I was elected to the House. I served 4 years in the House of Representatives. And then I was appointed to Senator John McCain's Senate seat after he passed away. And I served 2 years as a U.S. Senator. And now I'm on Martha 3.0. And Martha 3.0 is in the private sector. I'm thriving. I'm taking all the lessons I've learned, some very much the hard way, and through my own entrepreneurial endeavors, and also on the board of directors of 3 companies like Second Front Systems, all private. and doing executive coaching and leadership and leading adventure retreats and just really trying to help leaders and teams and people be the best version of themselves so that they can truly thrive for what they're here for and what their purpose is. So it's been a really exciting time for me, which is much more fulfilling than politics, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
cannot.
great to be with you today, and great to be working with the team at Second Front. You guys are awesome.
Heck yeah, well, we're grateful. It's quite a change, right? And I maybe you and I have laughed about this before, right? I was a light unit, right? So we were walking around on the ground. I was a beneficiary of the tremendous support an A10 is capable of providing, and will be
Mm.
forever grateful for it.
Yeah.
What's that change, right? I think,
Yeah, for
as
those on
we,
video, they can see the bullet. I know probably a lot of people
yeah, oh,
listen
yeah,
to audio only, but here's a
no, it's
30
video.
millimeter bullet. Here's a
Heck
1
yeah.
liter smart water bottle, right? It's
The
not,
noise
you're not
that
having
thing
kids in
makes
it.
is the sound of democracy.
Yeah.
So
Sound of
it's
freedom.
unbelievable. But
Yeah.
what's that change, as you talk about kind of Martha 3.0
Yeah.
and, lessons, I think there are a bunch of folks out there watching and listening who maybe are coming up to a point like
Yeah.
transition from 1.0 to 2.0, and it's a
Yeah.
very scary thing where
Yeah.
you've got this sense of purpose and this sense of identity and maybe like tribal belonging, and you're
Mhm.
going to take that off. What was that like, having such a impressive and significant career? What was that like for you? And sort of looking back now,
Mhm.
is there something you wish you'd maybe taken advantage of or done different?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my superpowers that I wasn't aware of until other people shared it with me is my ability to reinvent myself. And I don't know if that's the right way to say it. And as I looked at that, because I so many people do struggle with leaving the military, um, you know, going through a divorce, empty nesting the kids, selling the business, whatever that is, like a major transition in life that you either chose or you didn't, and being attached to the former identity of who we are. And so, what I have found is I actually don't. Um, I don't get deeply attached to the identity of the outside things, the rank, the title, the roles. I try to really stay more connected to like the essence of who I am, what my kind of core attributes are that only I uniquely bring to the world. And then when one chapter closes, sure, you grieve it, especially if you didn't choose it. I mean, it's okay to feel deeply and to grieve, but it provides the opportunity for you to express yourself in the world in a different way, but staying true to your core essence. So for me, I think about that transition. I mean, even in the Senate, I'll give you an example. So I ran to hold on to that Senate seat. I knew it was going to be nearly impossible to hold it, but I'm just one of those like purpose driven, let's take the hill and do the best you can with the things that you can control. And it sucks to like pour your whole life into serving and get, long after I'm dead, these attack ads will be, on the internet lying about me. But that's why I have thick skin. But, you go through all that and you grieve a loss, like in the midst of like, fuck, we're not gonna hang on. Like in that moment
Yep,
of like, I gave it my all and we came up short. In that moment of feeling it, I literally pulled out a piece of paper and on the top I wrote the bright side. That day, I wrote the
that's
bright
awesome.
side. And I started capturing like I tried to hang on to a glimmer of like, I know what this doesn't mean, but what could it mean? Like I'm a person of faith. Like I believe, all right, well, it didn't happen for a reason. So how could I possibly express myself in the world next, unconstrained from all the craziness of what I just had to deal with? So I would encourage anybody, if you're listening and you're in a transition or you're about to go through one, it's okay to feel afraid. It's okay to feel anxious about it. Lean into that. Don't like try and suppress it. By drinking or whatever else it is, like just lean into it. Try to kind of capture why you might be feeling that way. But your identity is not attached to these external things. The sooner you can realize that your identity is actually the essence of who you are. And I actually bring people through these drills when I take them out in nature. And I actually have over here a butcher paper in my kitchen. I'll turn it right here, like a butcher paper with my I am statements. I am courageous. I am integrity. I got all of it. I am generous. I am growing. I am relentless. So to remind myself every day as I'm making decisions, that's who I am. What I do reflects that, but what I do is not who I am, if that makes sense. So it's getting a little philosophical
Us.
here, a little
No,
newish,
but
but it's really important
it
for us to
matters.
transition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, we talk about, hey, taking that first step into, 2.0 or
Yeah.
3.0, whatever the next sort of version is, right?
Hmm.
There's a choice. You've got to take that kind of leap of faith.
Yeah.
I think the other side of that is, hey, there is personal and sort of organizational leadership and influence that comes along with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We alluded to some of it right there on your sort of like what I am list, right? I am then building in some of the ethos and the
Yeah.
discipline. But as you've gone, version one, version two, version three, you've had this ability to see leadership and influence and just from all of these wildly impactful lenses. Like, how do you then distill that down and take that?
Mhm.
And what does that start to mean to you now at 3.0?
Yeah, I have found, I mean, we learn so much along the way from ourselves and others. We learn from bad leaders and good leaders. I learned a lot of this in my own personal growth. Like, I didn't do all the things that I'm coaching today. It's because I realized I was being ineffective in the way that I was leading. And then I just deep dive into the study of it all, of like human behavior and what motivates us and organizational psychology, like all the stuff that helps understand, like, ultimately leaders are leading people, right? And so if people are going to grow, then businesses are going to grow. And I think we're actually at a really unique time right now where there's this massive clashing that's happening between like the demands of leadership, like we need more productivity, we need more growth. There's a maybe complaining about the younger generation, you're not working hard enough, why do you want work-life balance in your 20s, you should shut up and grind like we did, right? There's this dynamic
Yep.
going on. And
Yep.
you have maybe the younger workforce, not all younger, who are saying like, wait a minute, I'm not just gonna grind for a paycheck for 40 years so that I can live the life I want to live when I'm 65. Like, I want to live some of that now, and I also want meaning and purpose, and I want to feel valued. Sometimes that comes to an extreme, right? You come out of college and, within 6 months you want to be the CEO. So there's this element of like, that's not what mastery is. You actually do have to grind and work in order to master some stuff. I think there needs to be adjustments on both sides. Otherwise, we are on a collision course. And I've seen this with so many companies where I'm giving keynote speeches and where I'm coaching, is like there's this collision course of frustration, and it's not going to end well if leaders don't decide, like, okay, let's be a little curious about where some of this is coming from and provide opportunities for coaching and mentoring and developing people where they feel connected with purpose, where you're building trust, and they want to be a part of something greater to themselves, where they feel like they're valued, but they also need to like sit down and master skills, right? So I think we've got the leaders who choose to master mentoring and coaching and developing people underneath them and providing opportunities for them to feel that level of trust so that they can contribute more and produce more. Ultimately, the company is going to grow and the profits are going to grow and the abundance is going to grow for everybody. And I think that's the critical juncture that we're at right now. We got to turn that frustration into a real opportunity for growth like we've never seen it before. Instead of extracting more out of people, we're all expanding together.
You use the word curiosity, and
Yeah.
for I think you're sort of getting at the like, hey, we need to have more empathy towards, folks that are in maybe a different age demographic or a different
Mm-hmm.
place in their life. How have you, not to switch into like full sort of executive coach or mentor, but if there's someone out there listening and they're like, hey, I grew up, went to played sports, went to a service academy, was in the military, been doing, work the grind. How do we sort of, access that place where we can be more empathetic and more curious in a real
Yeah.
way, not in like a transactional kind of
Yeah.
manipulative way? How do you help people do that?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, to lead others, you got to lead yourself. So the first thing is looking inward as a leader. I think we have a lot of leaders right now who are exhausted, maybe a little fearful. I think there's some dynamics of insecurity. There's always the, imposter syndrome that you often
Oh
get some
yeah.
people as they get promoted. But the reality is, when you're asked to do something you've never done before, if you can think about like concentric circles of how we grow in life, you're always going to be right on the edge of the circle because what you've been asked to do is something if you've never done it before, by definition, you don't know how to do it. It's temporary incompetence, right? And that's what
Yeah.
comes with fear. And
Yeah.
so actually being honest about that instead of trying to pretend you know it all and being like a drill sergeant instead of a leader is like, hey, we're going through uncharted territory. I'm in a new position. We're in this together, and actually show some vulnerability. There's this trust equation, if you've ever heard it. I didn't come up with it. I'm trying to remember who did, but it's reliability plus credibility plus intimacy over self-orientation divided by self-orientation. So as a leader,
Okay.
you've got to show that you are credible, like you're competent in your skills that you're asked to be doing, right? You're competent in the area that you're leading. There's a reliability. You do what you say you're going to do. Like there's so many leaders are just well intended, but they don't follow up, and then you become unreliable. The intimacy is showing a little bit of vulnerability so that you're actually connecting at the human level and not just barking at people. And then that all has to be over less self-orientation. The denominator is like, no, this is about us. This is about the team. This is about you. And people can sense that. And I think all generations are looking for that kind of trust. So as a leader, it starts with you. If you're showing up and you're trying to pretend you're compassionate, but really you're just wanting them to shut up and produce more, people sense that, right? So
Yeah.
you've got to like look inward first and make sure you're showing up. You got your stuff together. You're not like exhausted. You're not in a place where you can't even do strategic thinking, which is your job. Stephen Covey's quadrant 2, all the stuff that's important and not urgent. Like you need to own that and create the space for that and show up, in a way that you're responding and listening and asking questions, maybe instead of just barking orders. Chris Voss, actually, I've gotten to know him through an entrepreneurial network I'm in. He wrote, he's a former hostage negotiator, and he wrote the book, I
Got
think.
an awesome master class.
Yeah. Yeah, he
Yeah.
talks about different
I took
communication
his
skills.
master class. Yeah,
Like
it's crazy.
some of this is literally like mastering some new skills, new tools that you use. So, for example, he says ask questions that I think he says this answer with no, because there's something neurologically about people want to people want to be able to say no, get permission to say no. If you're asking them a question where they're going to say yes, they feel like they're being pressured into something. It's just more, again, just neurologically, or, mirroring back what they said to you. Like, so you're telling me what I think I heard from you is that you're looking for some more flexibility at work, and ask questions about how do you think we can meet your objectives with the objectives of the team for collaboration, and how does that work for you? So showing true curiosity. Some of this may feel clunky at first if you're using them for the first time, but that's okay. Like try them on and sees what's working naturally for you. But you first got to make sure you're doing the inner work as a leader so that you're not faking all this and people can see you're faking it.
Yeah, it's I like the concentric circle, like the temporary incompetence. I've never thought about it that way. That makes a ton of sense as to why I think everybody at various points of their day, week, career, whatever, feel very
Yeah.
much like an imposter.
You should,
I think
though. I
that,
mean, you should
yeah,
feel that tension. Otherwise, you're not growing.
that's
You're
right.
not expanding, right? You're
That's right.
just staying comfortable in what's,
You're staying in the same spot.
yeah, yeah,
I think the one of the bigger, and you alluded to it, right? Like what we used to call in the service leader, the burden of command is part of that need to be able to create space where, hey, I recognize that like we're in a gunfight right now, or the tyranny of today, but
yeah,
there is still a strategic sort of design and a strategic outcome that we have to go achieve, that and both of those need to be worked concurrently, right?
yes,
And you can't stop the grand strategy, the full campaign, because there's a gunfight over here. You've
yep,
got to be able to harmonize around that. And
mhm,
putting the actual time and the system in place to allow yourself to do that, I find to be one of the more difficult things as organizations are scaling. Where have you seen
yeah,
folks doing well, or like maybe cheat codes or
yeah.
anything like that?
Well, the first thing I would do is audit every fucking meeting you have on the schedule. Like,
Yep.
excuse my language, like every single one.
Oh yeah.
I think, especially during COVID, people equated meetings to work, and
Yep.
actually meetings take up meetings without a purpose, without needing everybody to be together in a room, are wasting people's time so that they actually can't do the real work that they have been asked to do in a knowledge economy. Anyway, obviously I'm not talking about people on an assembly line, right, doing
Yep.
physical work. And so I would do a full on meeting audit as to, and I am like anti-meeting generally. Like I would actually, this is a crazy bold thing to do. Like literally take every meeting off your calendar for your team. Like just clear the calendar for a month. And now you only get to add a meeting in if it requires everybody to come together in a synchronous way, not in an asynchronous way, where you're actually having to collaborate for an opportunity to create something, right? Or to get to a solution that you need the churn and the sausage making happening real time. Otherwise, if you're just communicating something to people, use other tools, and you have to come up with what you use email for, what you use Teams or Slack or whatever for, what you use phone calls and in-person meetings for. Like this is all the boring stuff, but it's really, really important for you to be as productive as possible and to create the space for people to actually do deep work. So I'm a big fan. There's a good friend of mine, Nick Sonnenberg, wrote a book, Come Up for Air. It's a great start to just think about how do we just get rid of all this administrative crap that actually is stopping us from working. And Cal Newport, who's an expert in this and productivity and deep work, talks about it's pseudo work. It's not real work, right? And then we've got to put things on our calendar and block them off and be ruthless about protecting those when the tyranny of the urgent comes up, especially as leaders. Blocking time for strategic thinking, blocking time for strategic planning is one of the most important things you can do, even if it doesn't feel like it when there's fires raging around, but it can really help move your team forward, and they will be grateful for you because only you as a leader can have that time of strategy and vision. So blow up all your meetings. Sorry, I don't
I
know.
like that.
That messes up
I
second
guess
front.
no, I mean it's funny. It's a great, and I find that I think I cite the Rakuten CEO has this 3-10 rule, right? Where like every time something triples, everything around it kind of
Yes,
breaks, right? Like
yes,
number of customers, revenue, number
yep,
of employees, pick your sort of metric, right?
yep,
And so when I go back to that like Alvin Tofflerism on like change isn't merely necessary to life, like it's life. It's just like rapid, continuous sort of
yep,
evolution.
yep.
And the meeting that worked last month, you're going to get to a point where it doesn't work
It
next
doesn't
month.
work now.
And you got to be all right with
Yeah,
seeing that
adjusting.
as progress and not
Yes,
chaos,
right.
right? Because there's also this like human element of,
Yep,
hey, like a human, like Maslowian, right? Like Maslow's gonna say, hey, I want stability because stability makes me feel
yes.
secure and secure makes me feel
Mm-hmm.
stable. And if you're growing and you're evolved, like it
You
is
got to be
not
able to evolve.
stable. It is secure, but it isn't, locked and consistent
Predictable.
and
It's not
sort of fit.
predictable. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
And I
that's a
think
mindset you've got to bring in as like a cultural kind of first principle.
Yeah, and I think it's important as you do, Tyler, to make sure the team knows that, right?
Yep.
Like you're secure, but we're not stable, which means we're constantly looking for ways to improve. We're growing, growing, growing. We're seeing where the constraints are and getting rid of them. But we trust you. We're gonna help develop you. You are valued, and we need to have open communication, just like we did in the military. I mean, when we would
Yep.
come back and debrief a mission, it didn't matter if it was a colonel flying with a lieutenant. You took the rank off, you looked at what the objectives were, and you identified areas where you screwed up, fess up, and how can we improve and move it along with a team and a mission focus. And so,
Yep.
but you have to be aware that there are human beings who are afraid. Loss aversion actually motivates us 10 times more than what we're going to gain. It's just the way our
Yep.
brains work. It's evolutionary. Our lizard brain is wanting to protect us from the saber-toothed tiger, and that shows up in the workplace. So leaders need to know that and provide that sure footing for people, building that trust, and just honest, continuous over communication through various means. If you're tired of hearing yourself talk as a leader, you still have not communicated enough, right? You have
Right.
to do it in multiple ways. I mean, even just like a weekly video from you to everybody, like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how things are happening, going here. This is why we did this. Having skin in the game for team members. I'm a big fan of people having the opportunity to have equity so that they're a part of the growth, and they're a part of the winning, right? And the abundance, and they feel
They own some of that
valued.
future and that
Yeah.
outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was at a entrepreneurial network meeting last week, and one of the guys gave a great tool I want to share with everybody, and I thought it was beautiful. He said, there's two different modes you could ask your team to be in. One of them is WIT, whatever it takes. And the other one is BIC, best I can. And whatever it takes
Cool.
is like, hey, there's a crisis going on. Like, we're on the verge of maybe getting this massive contract or not. Like, this could be an inflection 10x opportunity. We're all working around the clock for the next X number of days because this is so freaking important. And I know sacrifice is going to be made, but this is a WIT moment.
Yep.
And the best I can is more like, hey, do the best you can. It's like a ship it mindset. Like, hey, we've got to kind of manage a different mode that we're in where we're improving, but we're not like in a constant max on grind, because you can't be in a WIT mode all the time. When leaders are
You
asking
burn everything
everybody,
out. Yeah.
yeah, when you do that all the time, then if everything's important, nothing's important. But when you can ask your team to get into a different mode and they understand why, and they know they'll be able to get back to the other mode, that can really help them. I just love the way he framed that. So it's another
I
tool.
like that. And like knowing how to communicate which time it is,
Yes.
right? Is it a
Yes.
WIT or is
Yes.
it a BIC? Yeah, I think that goes back to your point to like having the empathy and the curiosity and sort of the sense of the nervous system or the emotional
Yeah.
stability or the North Star of the organization.
Yeah. How long is this? Is this going on for a week or a year?
Yeah.
This kind of grind mode
Yeah,
right
you can't whatever it takes for a 12-month campaign. That's chaotic.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
All right, so we're turning into sort of the end here. We've had I think a really interesting set of conversations around everything from sort of the courage to take the step and continue to improve and, you know, change or reinvent yourself. I heard a lot of continue to grow and sort of evolve,
Yeah. Yeah.
talked about the human value as a leader and what that means, and that can be, hey, I'm leading one person, that can be I'm leading 1,000 people. What it starts with is sort of leading yourself, and then we talk about how to find tools, right? Whether it's from Chris Voss, whether it's from some of the entrepreneurial network of sort of like, hey, how do I toggle between these two worlds, right? That plus sort of your career, right? That's an unbelievable journey. So this is going to be a big question because you've had a really impressive career and just life experience so far. But I ask everybody at the end, right? You had a magic wand, king or queen for a day. You could go change one thing, and like you don't have to caveat it. It's not, well, hey, it would take one, two, and three. You could just change something. What would you change and why?
I think we should allow dogs in restaurants in America, just like in Europe.
I love that. My psycho dog would absolutely just take full advantage of that.
Well trained dogs.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm telling you. I mean,
No,
I was
I
in
like it. That's a
Europe. I could
happier
bring my
restaurant.
dog everywhere, and they would just go under the table with me. There's something about it's good for everybody. The serotonin levels are up,
Yep.
the oxytocin levels are up. Everybody feels connected.
Everybody loves dogs too.
Everybody loves dogs. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's a great
all
answer.
kidding aside, I think we're at a moment in time where there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of people who are doomsdayers for where
Yeah.
we're going in the world, and how disruptive things are and how dangerous it is. I just totally disagree. I think this is the best time to be alive. And it is an amazing time to be an American. It's always an amazing time to be American. We are so blessed to be in this country at this moment in time. And I think we are going to see our lives and our world change in the next 10 years in ways that we could not even fathom. We are at an inflection point, and there is going to be more opportunity and more abundance and more freedom for all. And I truly believe that, but we've got to be a part of it. Like, we are going to be creating this future. And as leaders, it's our responsibility to steer the rocket in the direction, dealing with all the contingencies that come up. And it'll be a shit show for sure. There'll be times
It
where,
always is, right?
yeah, but it's the best time to be alive. And so
Couldn't
let's
agree
not
more.
contract. Let's actually like lean forward as leaders, as people, to be like, where's the opportunity for me to be a part of this and to me to contribute to this in a way that's meaningful for the country, for the company that I'm with, for the team I'm with, for my family, whatever, however you want to frame it. But it's the best time to be alive.
I think that is an awesome call to action, though, of like, hey, see the positive, see the opportunity for the future, and lean in and help create it for everybody.
Yep.
That rocks. Martha, as always, thank you so much for stopping by and spending some time together.
Thanks, Tyler. You're a rock star.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.